We have over 14 million registered users on the platform.
Wow.
It's like over 150 countries now, 28 languages. It's so rewarding for us to hear from even like moms who'll say, hey, I felt comfortable letting my child go away to college because I know they'll stay adherent to their medications. It's super rewarding to hear from patients about how we're helping use technology to live better, fuller lives and manage their healthcare through technology. That's great.
Stacey, thank you so much for hopping on today's podcast. Excited to speak to you today and your work at Medisafe. And just quick plug, I know we are both UPenn graduates from the same exact major. So that was awesome to see and hear about when we first connected. And, first, you've spent, from what we talked about, over 20 years in commercial leadership roles, like across life sciences and healthcare. What is it about the work you're doing at Medisafe that keeps you motivated and engaged today?
Thanks, Bert. Great to be here. Yeah. Shout out to UPenn.
Yes.
CBB majors.
Yeah.
The work at Medisafe, I find super rewarding because we get very close to the patient. So much of what I've done over the years, worked, as you said, across healthcare with a lot of life science companies, pharma companies. And, the patient obviously is always a big part of what we're doing. But with Medisafe, we get so close to the patient. We started as a B2C platform. So, anybody can go into the App Store, Apple or Google and download Medisafe. We have over 14 million registered users on the platform.
Wow.
Who, I think it's like over 150 countries now, 28 languages. But the really rewarding part is that we hear from patients every day. We hear from patients, we hear from parents of children. We hear how Medisafe allows them to live fuller, more independent lives, how it keeps them healthy, keeps them on track. It's so rewarding for us to hear from even like moms who'll say, hey, I felt comfortable letting my child go away to college because I know they'll stay, adherent to their medications. And so it's super rewarding to hear from patients about how we're helping use technology to live better, fuller lives and manage their healthcare through technology. That's great. And then we also hear from our pharma partners about how the Medisafe experience has allowed them to really fulfill unmet needs for their patients or expose their patients to all these programs that they offer that patients may not be aware of. So for me personally, it's just so rewarding to know that we're doing something really positive in the world.
Yeah, spot on. No, I mean, those are some impressive numbers with your platform. Over 14 million users, you said, 140 countries. And it's clear you guys, not just work with patients every day, you hear from them. There's that feedback loop. I love the story of a mom being comfortable with her sending her kid to college so that they can stay, knowing that they're going to stay adherent to medications,
Right. And the way the platform is designed is if your loved one, it could be your child, it could be your parent, it could be a spouse, a friend, misses their medication, we allow someone to be a med friend. So that med friend gets notified if someone misses their medication. And so you can gently follow up with them just to make sure that everything's okay. And sometimes they've taken the medication but forgot to mark it, or sometimes they've forgotten or run out. And so, it's a good backup system. The interesting thing is we also, when we look at our data, we find that as soon as you add a med friend to your Medisafe application, you actually become more adherent automatically, because I think nobody wants to hear from someone that, there needs to be called to say, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? So, we've created a platform that really has proven to make patients more successful. Right. And so it's proven that we can increase adherence of medication. We can increase persistence, the time people stay on their chronic meds. And so for me, being able to work with my customers and show them the proof points of what it looks like to put a patient on Medisafe is quite rewarding.
Yeah. And I like how you narrowed down the example of like a mom sending her kid to college. Because I think a lot of public knowledge is like medications. When you think of that, you think of like the elderly population, but no, like there's younger populations too that need to stay adherent to all types of medications. So I like that.
Absolutely.
Spotlighted that.
When I look at our user base, it spans all demographics, right? Men, women, different age groups, as I said, geographically. Look, many of our patients are on multiple meds also. And so they just need help staying on track. Average Medisafe users on 6 or more meds. And some of that, it can be, vitamins and supplements, or people taking a baby aspirin every day. But our lives are all busy and it's easy to forget.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to stay on top of it. Like my father still uses I just think about him like he still uses his pill tablet that he has to fill at once a week, and there's tons of medications in there, and it's probably not consistently done every day, and there might be some misses. So I know there's a lot of, and he's part of the boomer demographic, but there's a lot of such cases out there.
Yeah, I mean, we also look at, are patients taking their medications appropriately? We had a case study that we worked on, I think it was for an asthma med, where the medication really should be taken at night. It's most effective if it's taken sort of like at dinner time. And we found through the Medisafe platform that about a third of the patients were taking it in the morning, which makes the medication less effective. And, when we reached out to find out, why they were doing that, they're like, well, that's when I take my other meds. But it gave us an opportunity, though, to educate these patients on why they should take it, in the evening. Or,
Yeah.
We often see patients who are really very good about taking their meds during the week and then fall off completely on the weekends because they're off their normal schedule, they're waking up at a different time, or they're out and about in a different way.
Yeah.
And so by use of the Medisafe platform, we can kind of steer them to better habits.
That's huge. Yeah. I want to dive a little bit deeper into like, you spend a lot of time in the field with like pharma teams, right? That like develop these medications and then take them to market. What are the current challenges with these pharma teams to approaching like patient engagement, especially around like these medications you talked about?
Yeah. So, one of the obviously trends that we see is a much bigger introduction of specialty meds. These specialty meds often go through specialty pharmacies. So, while most patients are used to going to their neighborhood pharmacy, their CVS, their Walgreens, these medications often come from specialty pharmacies. They require things like benefit verification or prior authorization. And a lot of people just have never had an experience with that. They don't understand the process. And so pretty universally, we hear from our clients about first fill abandonment, patients that never even get to that first script. So they've gone to their doctor, they've been diagnosed, they've been given a prescription, and yet never even filled that first prescription. And that could be just a misunderstanding of the whole process or the time it takes, the effort it takes. They sometimes don't understand why they're taking the medication or what it does from them. So, we hear from our customers pretty universally that even getting patients to that first fill can be a significant challenge. So, we deploy different features and tactics in our platform to help with that, whether it's educational resources or just keeping people up to date and aware of the process. We find that we can help drive better numbers around getting people to even start therapy. So like what I often say is really what we're about is how do we get patients to start therapy and then how do we get them to stay on therapy? So, we hear abandonment rates on first fill that can approach 50%. I think we see numbers like 30, 40, 50% on abandonment even to the first fill. So like what can we do to get patients on therapy, get them started? So that's one aspect of it. And then, the stay on therapy piece of it. We look at things like first refill or 90-day persistence, 6-month persistence, 1-year persistence. And in many, many cases, when I talk to pharma brand teams, at 1 year, they may be down to only 25% of patients who even got the original script, may still be on therapy. So it's a huge challenge that's pretty universal across our brands. Even for chronic medications where patients should be on for many, many years, as long as the medication stays, effective. And yet we see significant drop off. So can you imagine you work so hard to get the patient to go see the doctor, they get the diagnosis, they get the script, and then 1 year later, you're down to 25% of those patients still on the medication.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's a huge
It's
drop
a
off.
significant challenge, a significant problem in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. And so you talked about like there's very clear, I was going to call them incentives or trends here around like fills, adherence, persistence. What is your approach at Medisafe to solving those, especially with the advent of AI? Like and can you fill us in on? And you
Sure.
gave me a good example already, but like what are some of the real impacts you're seeing in the market with using AI to address those?
Yeah. So for us, we take I think quite a unique approach. So to start off, our solution is holistic in nature. So we typically don't create a solution just for a single brand because as I said earlier, many of our patients are on 6 or more medications. So from our perspective, we don't want to send patients to 6 different digital solutions, whether they're web pages or apps. So we create a holistic solution where patients can manage all of their medications in one place. So that's one sort of aspect of what we do. So patients, the typical patient on Medisafe is going in every single day. Some of their meds might be once a week. Some of their meds might be twice a month. Some may be daily. Some might be multiple times a day. So they're going into Medisafe every day because they're managing their full medicine cabinet. The other sort of approach that we've taken is around personalization. So we know that a highly personalized experience will keep patients engaged and retain them over time. And we do that through some pretty advanced behavioral science, but to your point, also using AI. So how can we use AI to determine things like models that we would set up could be around the tone or the voice of the messages, the cadence of the messages, the time of day, best available time, because we want not only the messages that we send out, but also the content that we deliver to feel very personalized to each individual patient. So Bert, you and I could be on the same medication, suffer from the same condition, but be very different places in our patient journey, right? You may be newly diagnosed, new to therapy, new to specialty meds, maybe never have injected yourself before. You're going to have a very different set of needs than perhaps I do if I've been diagnosed for many years, already on medication for many years, but maybe I'm having challenges around affordability, paying for my medication. So in the Medisafe platform, you and I would be delivered very different content. Yours would be more about getting started, understanding your disease, maybe an injection site tracker. I may be being given more information about patient support programs or affordability programs that are available to me. So not only in the way we message you to get you to take the next best action, but in the content we put in front of you so that it feels very pertinent to your specific situation and your specific challenges.
Wow.
So that's one way, like, we really use AI in that highly personalized experience. We also offer a very integrated experience, right? So our pharma companies not only produce great medications, but they also have many different programs and services that they can offer to their patients. All types of educational resources, as I said, affordability, being able to communicate with human support teams and care teams. And we actually create those integrations right on the platform so that patients can access those programs, understand those programs. And, it's one of the things our customers often talk about is that they create these programs and such a small percentage of patients end up actually using them. But by integrating them into the platform, we now make them much more accessible.
Yeah, right on. I mean, that's very, everything you do with this platform seems incredibly valuable, not just for patients, but for the pharma teams themselves. Like, you touched on, you don't create a solution for a single brand, right? Like, it's holistic. What AI could do, a personalization for patients, I love it. Like time of day, cadence, messaging, that's all so important, because there's no one size fits all model with patients.
Correct.
Every patient has different things going on in their life, but also with their own conditions that they're managing, right? It's not going to be.
And we see that even from, the way we communicate with patients can be very different. So, we have gone, Medisafe was traditionally an app. We were app-based for many years. But kind of, learning from our patients, understanding their preferences, we've moved to a more omni-channel experience. So now we offer web-based solutions, text-based solutions, voice agent solutions, because we know that patients have different preferences. Right. So you might say, text me. That's the best way to communicate with me. I may want a richer experience where I can sit at my desk and go on a web-based experience.
Right.
And you know what? The fact of the matter is you and I might feel one way today and feel very differently 6 months from now because something's changed. And so we want to make sure that we can reach patients not only in a personalized way, but in the communication style that they prefer. So that's why we've moved to a more omni-channel experience that allows us to offer that.
And is it proactive too for the patients? Like if it, let's say it like can detect like, hey, you've been off course with adherence for like a couple of days now, or hey, you're not meeting the time of day that you were last week. Like, is it proactive in that sense too for patients?
Absolutely. So just to go back to my example around weekends, if we see that over time patients are missing doses on the weekends, we'll send out a message that makes a suggestion about instituting a weekend mode, right? Let's go to weekend mode. Maybe 7 a.m. is great during the week, but maybe 10 a.m. is better for you on the weekends.
Yeah.
So we'll make those kind of suggestions. Same thing as like if we know that you've left for work already and your medication's at home, it's going to be silly for us to message you once an hour all day when your medication is sitting on your nightstand and you're in your office 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
So we can say like, probably better idea for us to message you when you get home tonight and remind you about taking your medication then.
Yeah.
So those kinds of sort of time of day things can be really effective. The other thing that we do is we provide sort of a weekly summary for the patient that will say like, hey, Bert, great job. You were 7 out of 7 this week. Or, hey, we see you took 5 of your 7 doses. We also kind of experiment with, is it better for me to say to you specifically, hey, you missed 2 doses? Or is it better for me to say, hey, you took 5? So do I talk to you about the missed doses or do I talk to you about the ones you've taken?
Yeah.
We see that for different people, different messages work better. And that's really another piece of the personalization is, do you respond better to the negative message or do you respond better to the positive message? We also find that for some people, if I just put your name in the message, it makes you read it. So that's another thing. The other thing we'll do is because patients are, again, giving us all of their different meds, we also have like over 100 different health trackers on the platform.
Wow.
So people are tracking things like their sleep, their mood, their pain. I track my itchiness because I have a lot of allergies. We can also start to look and see, can we find correlations between those things? Like on the days you say you didn't sleep well, we see that you don't take your medication. Or, so we're kind of providing personalized information, content at the right time, in the way that you like to communicate, but we're also driving insights for you too, that hopefully allow you to kind of understand what's driving your own healthcare as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. It really sounds like it's an all encompassing like digital companion for like these patients,
And that's what we call it, a digital companion.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. I love it. Now, what tends to then like hold back like pharma teams from adopting this type of like digital companion that provides engagement with their patients, and how are you guys helping them move past that?
Yeah. So, I've definitely been seeing a trend where I think very positively in terms of drug companies bringing a new product to market. I rarely see now someone who doesn't want some type of digital solution when they bring a new drug to market. So that's really encouraging to see that it's sort of becoming more of the mainstream way of launching you think about like, would I ever launch something without a digital companion?
Yeah.
Especially in a chronic disease state. Acute diseases might be a little bit different, but in a chronic disease state, we see that. I think for some amount of time, I always used to say that we were lived in an industry of FOMO, right? So like if my customer, somebody else is doing it, my competitor's doing it, I should do it. But I think something that happened, over the years was this idea of FOMO, fear of messing up. And I think that there were some digital solutions that came to market that were not successful. Either patients didn't use them or patients didn't know about them. And, we always say there's this graveyard of healthcare apps out there.
Yeah.
So I think that some of our, some people in the industry had misses, right? They tried something and it didn't work. And so I think that for a while there, there was this trend about like, is this really the right way to go about it? I tried it and it didn't work out so well. So I think there was that little bit of like, do I do this again if I wasn't successful the first time?
Right.
So it's been really important for us to not only show them kind of how things have changed, but really provide our customers with very validated proof points, right? We do take the time to validate our solutions using independent third-party data that shows the best that we can, isolating 2 different groups of patients, a group of patients who are on Medisafe, managing their branded drug, and then as best we can, a cohort of non-Medisafe users. So what we're really trying to do is isolate Medisafe as the difference, the variable that's different between the 2 groups.
Wow.
And to be able to really show the change in things like adherence, persistence, script lift. I think that's really helpful for our customers when we show them that we've gone that last mile, right? We've gone that those final steps to show that not only have we built a solution, not only have we enrolled patients and engaged patients over time, but by engaging them over time, we really do see a change in outcomes.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, and that FOMO like trend is interesting. And I think like with the advent of AI, like it's accelerated the learning curve, right? Not just for the like for buyers in the market for these pharma teams, but also like your own solutions. It's making the adoption faster, and because it learns, AI was able to learn from data, right? So there's no longer as many, like there is failure points, don't get me wrong, like AI is not perfect yet, but like there's less prominent as when it was just digital without AI, you know?
Right. I mean, the other thing I think that's important that you just reminded me of is, so we talked about having these millions of users, right? So
Yeah.
having 14 million users on the platform actually creates a ton of data.
Yes.
Right. So now we talking about billions and billions. I think the last number I heard was somewhere like 50 or 70 billion data points being generated from all these patients. So that's the other thing that we bring to our customers or our prospective customers, is the fact that we're going to use that data to help design the solution. We call it data-driven design. So we do understand how users of a certain brand or in a certain disease are actually engaging with digital solutions.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking to them to understand the unmet need that they might have. And so when we start working with a customer, we can provide actionable insights from day one.
Wow.
Even though we haven't built their solution or engaged even one of their patients on the branded solution, there's a good likelihood that we've engaged their patients or patients like their patients through our B2C app. And there's a lot that we've learned from that. And we want to take those learnings, take those insights, and apply them to building an even better solution for
Right,
for the
right.
patients on their brand.
Yeah, spot on. And that applies to not just like this data-driven solution approach. Is that not just apply to the cohort of patients, but also like types of medications or,
Absolutely. Right. So like as an example, rare disease, right? We do a lot of work in the rare disease space. So we have a ton of information on rare disease patients. Now, they may not all be patients that are on your drug or have your specific disease, but there's still a lot we can learn around rare disease patients as a group that we can then apply in our learnings. So
yeah,
it may be, as I said, it may be patients on your drug. It may be patients with the disease. It may be patients in a category, or it could be a certain demographic of patients. What do we know about patients 80 and older?
yeah,
What do we know about teenagers? Or, what do we know about different regions of the country? So because we have so much data, we can slice and dice it, geographically, demographically, patients on more than 3 meds, patients on more than 6 meds.
mm,
There's a lot to be learned from our interaction with these patients on a daily basis.
yeah, right on. No, I'm sure that's valuable for not just your like current customers, but prospective customers. Like a current customer that is planning on launching a new medication, or a prospective customer that needs more patients for their current medication. So, and on that point, like none of this all works, right, with like a consistent funnel or flow of patients, right? Like to stay adherent to the meds and drugs that are going to market. And there's a lot of growing talk right now in the industry about potentially banning direct to consumer like pharma ads in the US, right? And what, in your opinion, what would that mean for like how brands like pharma like brands and teams reach patients for these like drugs and medications?
I think it's really interesting, right?
Yeah.
We see brands spending in the hundreds of millions of dollars to reach consumers through direct to consumer advertising. So it's something that we think about quite a bit. I think there's a great place for Medisafe there in reaching patients and educating patients. But it's definitely something like a trend that we're very interested in and watching and thinking about.
Yeah.
How do we support our brands and how do we support patients in a world that may look very different if direct to consumer advertising goes away?
Yeah, because what is that channel like over television? Are we talking also like digital, like meta ads?
Who knows, right? I mean, I don't know how far reaching, Kennedy plans to take this, but we'll see, right? I mean, at certain times of the day, you can't turn on the TV without seeing drug ads,
Yeah,
one after the other. So obviously, there's a strong feeling in the industry that these provide value. I'm quite curious to see what happens if we decide that, TV, print, advertising to patients no longer happens.
yeah. And this has been around for the viewers that don't know. I think you and I both know this from our schoolwork, through Wharton, but like direct to consumer ads in pharma have been around for decades now. Like this is
Decades now, yeah. But think about it, pretty much only in the US.
true. Yeah.
Around the world, you really don't see this the same kind of, direct to consumer advertising that we see in the US. US is pretty much an anomaly when it comes to that.
That's a good point. I mean, and what is the alternative, right? It's more digital companion and engagement, I guess, for patients, based
Right.
on
So we
at
think
the
about
point of
different
care.
ways to engage patients, right? How do we think about engaging patients in a different way if
Yeah.
we're not reaching them through advertising?
Do you have any like partnerships in the market with physicians and providers that are at the point of care and, oftentimes rendering or ordering medications for patients? Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to interacting with physicians, we do that in a few different ways. We recently, a few months ago, introduced a product called Pathways. And this was really born out of a need that we saw for providers, particularly around infusion centers and health clinics,
Hmm.
where there was a need to do better treatment planning. Especially some of these therapies now they require other services along with it. So we launched something for Alzheimer's disease because some of the new drugs on the market, like Leqembi and Kisunla, require MRIs and lab tests and other things to happen. And physicians really needed better support in being able to treat these patients. So
Mm,
their current platforms, their EMR platforms, became insufficient to sort of manage these patients.
yeah.
And what we were hearing was that they were even limiting the number of patients they were able to see in a day or a week because they didn't have the right tools to support these patients through this treatment journey. And
Wow.
so we created Pathways. We launched it originally in Alzheimer's, but now across a lot of chronic diseases where we're actually supporting the healthcare provider in creating these treatment plans and making sure that patients are doing all the steps that they need to be successful on therapy.
Yeah.
And then we're now connecting that treatment planning HCP tool to the patient digital companion to facilitate bidirectional communication between the HCP and the patient. So we're really trying to do everything we can to, take a lot of the difficulty out of the patient journey for both the healthcare provider and the patient so that patients
Right.
can be more successful on therapy. So that's one way we're engaging with physicians and really fulfilling an unmet need that was there in the market
Yeah.
that we learned about through one of our pharma partners. So this was done with ASI Pharmaceuticals for their drug Leqembi, along with their co-partner Biogen, where they, look, they're out in the field, they're talking to patients, they're talking to
Right.
providers, they're talking to these infusion clinics, and they came to understand that this was a real pain point.
Yeah.
And so we were able to work together to develop this tool to really help to facilitate better treatment planning for these patients.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. That almost feels like the next frontier, like getting closer to the point of care, right? Because the earlier you can get that digital engagement with the patient,
Always something we're looking at, right? How do we get further upstream?
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the things that we're doing, we've traditionally been a solution from the time of prescription forward. But recently, we've been working with a pharma partner to actually even identify new patients.
Mm,
So patients
yeah.
that might not be aware of a therapy or might not, even know that there's a treatment available. How can we use our platform to actually even find patients to make them aware that a treatment exists?
Yeah.
So now we've actually gone even upstream to pre-prescription and even sometimes, pre-diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. With the advent of better screening and diagnostics, I think that's going to become even more important, like pre-prescription versus post, because when post-prescription, it's a lot of managing a condition for patients, like they've already gone down this path of what they have. Wouldn't it be nice to help prevent them the length of their treatment program, right? And improve their outcomes if you get in earlier. So
Look, I'm a big believer in anything you treat early is better than anything you treat late,
yes, 100%. I couldn't
right?
agree more.
So the more we can do to uncover and understand things sooner is better.
Yeah.
There are great treatments on the market, but you have to be diagnosed, then you have to get on the right therapy, and then you have to take that therapy appropriately, consistently, compliantly.
Yeah.
Because look, I truly believe that the medications that our partners are creating are tremendous, but they don't work if you don't take them. And
Yeah.
they don't work as well if you don't take them the way they're prescribed.
Yeah.
And so, from our perspective, if we can keep patients adherent persistent, it's a win for everyone.
Yep.
Obviously, it's a win for the patient, but it's also a win for the physician, right? Because sometimes they prescribe a drug and they don't understand why it's not working. Well, it's not working because the patient's not taking it right, or they're not taking it at all. It's a win for the payer, the insurance company, because they're paying for these medications. We've actually shown, we've done some studies in MS and epilepsy and other diseases where we've shown that by keeping patients adherent and persistent to therapy, we can keep them out of the emergency room. We can
Yeah.
keep them out of the hospital,
Yep.
right? Those are very costly events for insurers. So the Medisafe solution showing that we can keep people out of the emergency room because they've taken their MS drug or they've taken their epilepsy medication is really important,
Yep.
right? And now we're starting to show the downstream effects of that. We'd always kind of focused on adherence and persistence and script lift, but now we're showing like healthcare resource utilization, that we can actually reduce the number of claims or the dollars that are being spent on these patients because they're taking their medications. So it really, you talk about the triple aim. I think this is the quadruple or quintuple aim of
Yeah. Yeah.
all the different ways that this is taking costs out of the system and making patients healthier.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Absolutely. And I think the moment you align not just the patient, the pharma teams, but also the providers in the picture, that's that
How frustrating for a provider to see a patient, diagnose them, put them on medication, and the patient complains that they're not getting any better.
right.
Only to find out that they
Yeah.
really didn't take the medication or they didn't take it the way it was prescribed. And then the prescriber's trying something different. And quite honestly, the other medication is not going to work if they're not taking that one either.
Yep.
And so the other thing we like to do is try to understand the reason for non-adherence, right? So it's one thing to know a patient's non-adherent, but it's even more important to understand the why. So, we also work with our clients and our patients to understand the why of the non-adherence. Is it forgetfulness? Is it they ran out of meds? Is it financial? Is it they didn't understand? Is it side effects? Because once we can understand the reason for the non-adherence, then we can solution for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. No, I mean, it's clear you guys have created like a comprehensive solution for it's like it is a digital companion, but to really cover the whole gamut of you've mastered the post prescription and now are trying to go further upstream with pre-prescription, so I'm excited to see where you guys are headed next. And on that point, for pharma teams out there, even the providers, that deem like, hey, this is the direction we need to move in or we're interested in moving in, with digital engagement around medications, like what is the best way to start exploring Medisafe and connecting with your team online?
Yeah, absolutely. Visiting our website is a great place to start. We're at medisafe.com. There's a lot of case studies and tools there. You can request demos. We're really happy to do custom demos based on your specific needs or your specific population. So, follow us on LinkedIn at Medisafe. We post a lot of our case studies and things there so you can learn more about our approach as well. I'd also encourage people to download the Medisafe app, right? The consumer app is free to consumers in the US. So, download the app, use it for yourself, use it for a parent, a child. So certainly experiencing Medisafe that way, through the free app is a great way as well.
Yeah.
And then certainly I'm happy if people want to reach out to me. It's Stacey at Medisafe, Stacey, Stacey at medisafe.com or through LinkedIn at Stacey Meltzer Wasserman. Happy to talk to folks. I spend all day with pharma leaders, and it's what I love to do.
Yeah. I love the plug. I mean, on all those, especially though the app that's free to consumers. Now we'll definitely have to drop that in here in the comments and
customers or potential customers. By the end of the call, most calls are like, as soon as we get off the phone, I'm going to download Medisafe for my dad or for my,
Yes. That's literally what I'm about to go do, I think, is make sure my dad, because his medicine cabinet, if you would see it, you would probably have a hoopla over it, because it's literally a tablet that's like every day of the week, and it's like, it's not, he'll say it's consistently taken every day. It's not. Like, let's be,
Well, and he's no different than most people.
Yeah. Right. And some people don't even have them organized, and they so there's all types of.
So look, we believe in, right? We live in this age of technology and technology should improve our lives.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about how AI can improve our lives, technology in general can improve our lives. This is certainly a tool that helps improve our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great close there. And Stacey, I really appreciate you making some time for the podcast today. Enjoyed speaking to you and learning about all the amazing work you guys are doing at Medisafe. We'll be keeping tabs and being on the lookout for those case studies that are coming, because you guys are doing impactful work, not just with the pharma teams and brands, but even you were talking about the work with providers, upstream with your new pathways solution. So I'm excited to keep tabs on that. And this is a very important space of beyond adherence, just engaging patients and having a digital companion for them. So kudos to you guys, and thanks for being a great guest.
Thanks, Bert.
Yeah, thank you.